The Great Depression was a dramatic, worldwide economic calamity which started in 1929 and lasted until the late 30s. Most people believe it began with the U.S. stock market collapse of October 1929. By 1932, U.S. stocks were only worth 20% of what they were prior to the crisis, and 1 year later, almost half of all United States banks had failed. By 1935, roughly 750,000 farms had been lost to bankruptcy or distressed sales. European countries, debilitated by the debt they've accumulated due to World War I, dealt with a severe depression and a sovereign debt crisis ultimately emerged. In Germany, for example, unemployment reached 25%, and among other things, this economic disaster led to Hitler's Nazi Party becoming the top political actor after the 1932 elections. Worldwide trade was devastated by the Great Depression, with countries engaging in so-called trade wars by limiting imports. And by the same year, 1932, global trade crashed to half of the pre-crisis volume. Unfortunately, trade wars degenerated into an actual armed conflict, which caused over 60 million deaths. World War II. Make no mistake, most wars have been caused by economic factors to a very large degree. Let's learn from the past and not let this happen again.
Okay, so that's just a quick little video.
Possibly the single most pondered question in history.
Thank you. All right, so that's just a quick little video I always like to show, kind of dealing with the Great Depression itself and the stock market crash, which is what this next set of videos is going to be. So if you're following along, this is literally just the next set of PowerPoint notes under the Great Depression unit in our CoreSites accounts. So let's talk about the Great Stock Market Crash of 1929. So there's quite a bit of vocabulary within this PowerPoint itself, so just make sure that you're kind of paying attention to that. So for example, on this slide, our vocabulary is bull market, margin call, and then speculation. So a bull market is when your stock market is doing well. So if I was to draw again our economic factors or like our business cycle up here, sorry. This period of growth right here, that is your bull market. So your bull market is when your stock market is doing well. Your bear market is where or when your stock market is not doing well. So your bull market is a growth in the stock market, and your bear market is a shrinkage of the stock market. So in the late 1920s itself, the stock market is doing very well, and that's because of these very risky, very high stakes speculation and other honestly illegal factors that were, it wasn't illegal then, but we would consider it illegal today, things that were happening within the stock market itself. So because of this very prolonged growth in the stock market, so again, the stock market is growing, it's expanding, what ends up happening is 10% of all American households own stock, which doesn't seem like that much. I mean, again, we're saying that 90% didn't, but dealing with how much it was growing, it was becoming quite a big thing. And it's a lot of even not just rich people were owning stocks. People within the middle class that necessarily couldn't afford it were still doing it. Now, investors began to do something known as buying on the margin, which is honestly another vocabulary word for you. So buying on margin or buying on the margin is where you don't have enough money to buy a stock outright. So I don't have $300 to buy a share of Apple stock. So what I am doing is I'm going to put down a small cash down payment, and then I will make like monthly payments on it until I'm able to fully outright own that stock. A margin call is when a stockbroker is going to demand that the investor pay back the loan. So it's basically me, myself, I did not have enough money to buy my share of Apple stock. So I'm taking like a small loan from my stockbroker, the person who sold me that stock. And the margin call is when my stockbroker, Joe Blow, decides that he is going to call in my loan, basically saying, Savannah, you've had enough time now to make up the money to fully buy the stock. You need to pay me back. So that's the whole idea behind that. And then that's where speculation comes in. So what's happening with speculation is buyers they're going to bet that this stock is going to grow, and the amount of money that they paid for it at the beginning, it's going to be worth more money later on. So they're buying these very risky stocks, hoping that that stock price is going to continue to climb, and then that they will be able to make a large profit. So that would be me buying stock in what would be something that's really risky sounding? That would be me buying stock in a jet fuel powered car. I'm going to buy the stock very cheap. It's a really risky investment, but I'm banking on the idea that this is going to take off and I'll be able to sell my stock in this jet fuel powered car for 10 times the amount that I paid for it. Now, this is where we get to the stock market crash itself. So this did not happen all on one day, but it did happen very close together. First thing that happens is Monday, October 21st, 1929. The stock market had a little bit of a hiccup. So again, I'm going to bring out my marker here and draw some stuff for you. We're going to go with that deep purple. Okay, so let's do it like, you know what? I'm going to delete, ooh, my bad. Hold on. Sorry, guys. I'm going to delete this picture for the moment. That way I have some blank space. Okay. All right, so here is my stock market. So the stock market's been going up. Here is where we reach our October 21st, 1929. I have a little bit of a downturn, okay? Not enough for people to start freaking out traditionally, but what happens is all of these people that have been speculating the stocks and buying on margin, this is where it's scary for them. So the stock market takes a small plunge, and people now have to begin to pay back the loans that they used to buy stock. Now, if people had been doing reasonable stock market buying, they were not speculating or buying on the margin, this little teeny hiccup right here honestly wouldn't have mattered. But because people were not doing safe, reasonable financial stock market buying, that is where we now get to the point where we're in. So we have our little blip right here. So at this point, people now begin to freak out, and they're going to start selling their stocks at any price that they can think of. And so by the time we get to Thursday, October 24th, it kind of looked like this, and then we get to Thursday, October 24th, right here, the stock market plunges again. This is known as Black Thursday. Black Thursday is what becomes known as this. So we take another plunge. Now what happens is the stock market closes at 5 p.m. on Friday. So there's no stock market buying, selling, trading, or anything like that on Saturday and Sunday. So Thursday, the stock market takes another plunge. All right, I want to continue on. So Thursday, stock market takes another plunge. That's now going to lead us to Tuesday. Hold on, let me go back here real quick and put my picture back on it. There we go. That leads us to Tuesday, what becomes known as Black Tuesday. And that is honestly where the stock market just completely, utterly bottoms out. So I'm going to draw this again for you. All right, so here we have our stock market. It's been going up and growing and growing and growing. We have that period of time, Monday, October 21st, and we take a little bit of a blip. People start freaking out, and then we get to Black Thursday where we plunge in the stock market again. Now, what happens is the stock market then closes on Friday. There's no trading on Saturday or Sunday. It opens back up on Monday, and then all of a sudden we reach Tuesday, October 29th, 1929. And this is where we have a complete and total pretty much bottoming out. Like, I mean, a straight, like if this was a roller coaster, this is going to be the drop right here that people scream and possibly like faint or even like pee their pants on. It was such a sharp, sudden bottoming out. On that day alone, over 16 million shares of stock were sold. In one single day, 16 million shares of stock was sold. That day alone, the stock market lost, on one single day, the stock market lost between 10 to 15 billion dollars. That's not counting the amount of money that the stock market lost on October 21st or on Black Thursday. Now what happens here is, and really what it came down to is because all these people, now their loans, they're buying on the margin, it's getting called in. And so they're having to sell their stock at whatever price they can sell on. People are scared. And so they think, okay, I bought my stock in Coca-Cola for $2 a share, and now the price has dropped down to $1.75 a share. I need to go ahead and sell this stock now. That way I don't have that big a loss, and instead of waiting to see what happens. People were not willing to try to ride out the stock market. So what happens with the stock market is it continues to fall and fall and fall, and then by the time we get to November, your traditional price of stock had dropped by more than a third. So if your stock price right there was originally $3. Now you're paying only a third of that. $30 billion by the time 1929 was over, $30 billion was lost. So again, so think about this. This happened at the end of October. So really, you're just looking at November and December. And in 2 short months, $30 billion was lost. That is literally the equivalent of every single amount of wage all Americans earned in the year of 1929. So here's what we're looking at here too. So this is another chart, and here we have what is called the annual high and the annual low. So this is taking into account either the highest amount of stock market prices for a particular good and the lowest amount. So you could see that what happened is that right up here in the 1920s, we had really high amounts of stock prices. And we could see how quickly it just bottoms out. It plummets. Here's another map to give you an idea of it. This day alone here is Black Tuesday. This point, let me pull my marker up again. Let me see if that might make it a little bit better. Marker, come here. There we go. I'm going with my pointer. Okay, so this point right here, that is Black Thursday. And then, let me erase that. So again, this day alone is Black Thursday. And then this day, we'll do Yellow. That's what my sister used to call yellow. Yellow is Black Tuesday. That is how much it dropped down. It's crazy. It's really scary. And for people who had put all of their money in on the stock market, this is an extremely scary time for them. Okay, so the next thing that's going to happen with the stock market is now the banks are going to begin to close. Banks were not making really sound financial decisions. People were going to banks and they were taking out loans of money, not to do something like buy a car or buy a house. They were taking out $10,000 in loans to buy stocks on the stock market because, again, they want to get rich quick. One second, my husband's calling me. So they're trying to get rich quick. By 1929, by the end of it, banks had loaned out $6 billion to stock speculators. So that's $6 billion of loans to people trying to buy stocks and get rich quick. The banks were also taking money that people were depositing in the bank and investing it in stocks themselves. So banks were also investing in stocks, and they're now not making money on that. In the end, banks are going to lose a lot of money from this, and then the banks themselves are going to go bankrupt and go out of business. So that's part 1 of the stock market crash. I'll create another video, continue on with part 2.